As a certain spectacular sporting event continues here in the UK, we continue to examine the cuisine of ancient Greece. Today we ask, what is the evidence for the foods which the ancient Greeks ate? Well, the most direct evidence comes from the places where the people of Greece's city-states lived. On archaeological excavations, a myriad of evidence is recovered which speaks of ancient diets. Often this evidence is so small that it must be recovered using water flotation to separate it out from particles of soil. These include minute mollusk shells. Each prefer a certain environment or particular food types. Flotation recovers seeds and even pollen, which tells us much about ancient plants, from cultivated crops to weeds. There have been studies of minute grape seeds tracing their DNA through time, and the larger, but no less important, olive stones, often found charred, having been discarded to the fire. If nothing else, they prove Greece had olives. Excavation recovers the bones of animals, which may have been eaten or farmed for dairy purposes. Here, a goat. Also the remains of other animals, such as fish, which may have been eaten fresh by the coast or salted and brought inland. All of this builds up a picture of ancient Greece as a living environment, and also the food resources available to people at the time. Another source of evidence is the recovery of artifacts which refer to or were used for ancient food and drink. The recovery of wine amphorae, for example, instantly speaks of wine and wine-making. But more than this, the recovery of thousands of fragments of wine amphorae in Rhodes from northern Greece can tell us something of ancient trade networks. Excavations such as at Selinus, a Greek colony on the southern coast of Sicily, reveal something of the context in which food was being sold and eaten. Within sight of the Temple of Hera was a thriving commercial district, where you could buy food and even ancient takeaway. Even the coins at Selinus depict food. Here, a celery leaf from around 500 BC. Further evidence of food comes not only from the function, but also the decoration upon ancient Greek pottery. Careful reconstruction of black and red figure vases reveals details of agricultural work, such as harvesting olives. We also become privy to practices of preparation, making food fit to eat. Sometimes the decoration reveals the function. Here, a dish for fish. In other cases, creative whimsy reveals something of the creatures which were known to the artist. Also, it is not just food which is depicted. Here we see grapes being made into wine. And here is depicted a woman collecting water from a spring. Artistic evidence also comes in the form of sculpture. Here, depicted in terracotta, is bread dough being kneaded, and in another sculpture, the buns are formed and being placed in the oven. Greek mosaics often depict sources of food. Here we see the bounty of the sea. Fresco wall paintings sometimes depict food being harvested. Here, a fisherman and his catch. And here, carved in stone, Triptolemus receives sheaves of wheat from Demeter, goddess of the harvest. A major source of knowledge of ancient Greek cuisine comes from the work of ancient writers. Aristophanes, depicted here, was a prolific comic playwright of ancient Athens. 11 of his 40 plays have survived virtually intact, and the adage "it's funny because it's true" means that in his comedies, fascinating details of daily life are preserved. We heard in the previous video, for example, that cheese, onion, and garlic were associated with soldiers on campaign, and they cried out with comic joy at the very thought of being free of these repetitive and smelly foods. In Aristophanes, not only food, but cooking implements are funny, used as weapons on stage. Food is prepared on stage, off stage, dreamed of, conjured up, and is symbolic of any number of issues within his plays. He invited the audience while laughing to think about the issues on stage, expressed often in culinary terms. Another important source was written by the rhetorician and grammarian Athenaeus. His book, whose title translates as Dinner Table Philosophers, apparently records 3 banquets and the conversations therein. They discuss many things over their food, including the size and impressive nature of modern ships. They discuss philosophy at great length, comparing good and bad philosophers. And through the course of his book, we are given details of the food and how these banquets played out. There is discussion as to the preparation of food, and Athenaeus even makes reference to a famous recipe. It is thought to be the oldest in Greek and the oldest recipe by a named author in any language. He refers to a recipe for preparing fish by a Greek-speaking native of Sicily, Mathacus. This recipe makes use of cheese, which appears to have been controversial to some. Contemporaries remarked that Syracusan cooks regularly ruined fish in such fashion. Let us now try this ancient, controversial recipe.
Hello again. Today we're going to cook another simple recipe, this time with fish. Fish was the main source of protein in the ancient Greek diet, and as we learnt in the last video, they mainly ate this meal in the evening. The ingredients that you'll need for this recipe are olive oil, breadcrumbs, cheese, freshly chopped dill, chives, salt and freshly ground black pepper. This recipe is for 4 medium to large fillets of fish. I'm using sea bass. The original recipe called for red bandfish. We're going to make a topping for the fish. What you need to do is take 50 grams of breadcrumbs, a tablespoon of chopped chives, a tablespoon of chopped dill, and 50 grams of cottage cheese. Mix those all together and add a tablespoon of olive oil. Place your fish on a well-greased baking tray, sprinkle over some salt and some freshly ground black pepper. Now we're going to put the topping on the fish. I'm only using about half of it because I've only got 2 fillets of fish here, but basically all you're doing is pressing your topping into your fish. While I'm evening out the topping, let me tell you about this recipe. It's the only recipe that survives from Mathacus's cookbook, and it was a one-line recipe that simply said gut, remove head and discard, rinse, slice and serve with cheese and olive oil. So now you're just going to place this in an oven that you've preheated to 190 degrees for about 10 to 15 minutes. Larger fillets may need 20. And here's the one we made earlier. Now Mark, unlike the ancient Greeks, I'm going to use a fork for this one. What about yourself?
No, I'm going to use my fingers, I think. Authentism and all that. Authentism? Very authentic. That's good.
Last week we used Worcester sauce. This week we've used cottage cheese. I thought we were doing a series on ancient recipes, Mark.
We are, and actually quite rightly, you guys did ask questions about the Worcestershire sauce, and actually I gained a wonderful video response about that. So if you want to check out the previous video, fantastic video response exploring garum/liquamen. In this instance though, we've gone with cottage cheese because it's simply the closest to the type of cheese that they would have had, or they would have been making. Now, you have tried...
Yes, I've tried it with feta, another Greek cheese, and thought that was really quite nice. So again, if you don't want to use cottage cheese, you could use feta.
But yeah, cottage cheese simply the closest. You could, if you wanted to, try ricotta, but that, we suspect, lacks flavour. Probably
not as much flavour, although the herbs are fairly pungent in this one, chives and dill, so it could work.
So there you go. As I say, check out Nicola's blog for the recipe. The link is below in the information for the video. Also, if you want to see what we did last time, check out the first video in the series. The link will also be in the description below. And until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.